Howdys and salutations, y'all! Holy cow, I forgot to update the stream info again. Well, first off, we'll start off with some good info rather than that. I, for once, am not exhausted, and I'm actually quite excited for this, so hopefully we'll be able to get to do some good stuff. What you can see, however, is I've been having some technical difficulties with the new brush we made last month, I guess. I don't remember when. Maybe before that? Oh, it gets a little fuzzy, doesn't it? But yeah. So I'm just trying to work out debugging a few of those, and then, you know what we haven't done actually like at all on stream? Because I'll be honest, I need a little break from the Blender. I was just repeating the same mistakes because I hadn't taken any time to actually review and learn and improve. So, yeah, we'll come back to that later once I actually properly refresh and have a different goal. Because redoing the same project twice within 2 months is frustrating, to say the least. Let me just update the stream info real quick, and then we'll sort of do a overview. Let's see. Let's see, category should not be Pokemon anymore. And it definitely shouldn't be Blender. Okay, now that we got those kicked out, we'll get a fresh go. At least the category is still art, so there's no change there. It still would be good to have different sub-art categories at this point. I mean, like, there's definitely enough of them on Twitch at this point to kind of justify it. Okay. Yeah, let's see. So you can see I seem to have accidentally made it impossible to see my brush. I did this earlier. I rebuilt the brush, not from scratch, but like readjusted some settings, like reset and did some adjustment settings, and it was working about 3 minutes before stream, but it didn't have any taper, and so it was just a flat width, as you can sort of see from these orange lines. So clearly that wasn't ideal. But now it's just gone. And, like, to be fair, I'm not getting pressure sensitivity or tilt sensitivity from my tablet right now either, so I need to fix whatever the heck's going on with that. Device disconnected. Well, okay, that might have been part of the problem. Oh, jeepers. Try button E. Oh, this is... Oh, duh, I never even realized that this was this part of the information. Oh, I guess I can't tweak those ones. But cool. Okay, I'll have to adjust these more later. Again, new tablet, still getting the hang of it. There we go. So at least I'm getting pressure sensitivity with that one. Okay, and I'm getting it here too now, and tilt... Okay, I've just got the brush really big on that one. Hold on. I don't know why the image is gone, or what happened to that. So if I were to... Okay, so there's pressure differences. And tilt sure doesn't seem to be doing... I mean, it's doing a little. Yeah, I think tilt's doing some, as opposed to straight up and down. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Gotta get back in the swing of things. Okay, well that's enough of that. We can... Hold on. I am going to save these as the default settings for this brush, just so we don't lose it again. And we're going to come over here. We're going to go ahead and just remove that old one because we don't need it. And we're going to get to what we're actually doing today. Whoops, let's bring our reference image down a little bit. It has been, well, it's not something I do very often at all. I need to do more. But we haven't done a proper illustration on here yet, which actually, holy cow, that word just reminded me. CSP has a speed paint thing, don't it? Let's see if we can kick that on. I'm going to look up how to do that real quick. paint. Or is it called time lapse? Time lapse. No, I don't want to go on their Twitter page. CSP time lapse. I'm moving away from Twitter at this point. It's like, regardless of the politics, it's clear that like it's kind of unstable right now, like organization-wise. And if it's unclear if stuff you do today is going to get you booted tomorrow, like that's an issue. YouTube's been doing the same stuff, and it's why I basically bailed from trying to get anything big over there too. Huge audience on YouTube. There's a huge amount of potential, but like your whole career could get upended because they decide that they like hate the color orange or something. Let's see. Does it have to be when you create the new canvas? Recording time-lapse as if existing work. Oh, okay, no, there's an easy file. Time-lapse, record time-lapse. Yeah, that's fine. We got disk space to spare, methinks. At least at the moment, hopefully. I mean, I hope I don't live to regret saying that. Oop. Sorry for the ASMR crunch. I have some Cheeto Puffs. I should probably not eat those while I stream, huh? Sorry. Okay. But yes, we will... Hold on, let's see. Well, maybe that's an actual account, but it sure looks like it's a bot one that just follows eternally. But, you know, cool if they're real. Huh. Well, in any case, it's something that I haven't done in my sketchbooks a lot recently, and it's something I really haven't done digitally ever, so this will be experimental. But I do have high hopes to actually do a proper, just, like, take something and just, like, try to go all in. Not attempting to stylize or cartoon it. Like, not sticking to my, like, flat colors that I usually like to do or anything like that. I'm just gonna stink and try to draw this. Which is kind of the best way to see what your current style is, for starters. But also, like, it's, I'll throw that for the time lapse, whatever. But also, it's just, I don't know, it's good practice and I haven't done it in forever, so I ought to. Cheapers. A disproportionate amount of the time lapse might be attempting to erase a smiley face, but that's fine. Here, we'll get an actual vector layer. We'll go back to the vector eraser. I'm gonna pop this layer away. Oop. Hit save, and okay, let's let me just get like a nice, fairly soft gray color. Sure, 7 C's across the board. I'll go with just a hair darker. Sure, 6/8, 6/8. Yeah, it feels a little more pencil-y. Not like a lot more, but just a tad. And I don't have a time frame for when this will get done. It's probably not going to be one stream. But we're gonna go for it. We're gonna see what happens. Might be a nice way to wrap up January. Okay. So, I'm going to, for just a second, I'm trying the like inbuilt image ref just to, you know, give it a shot, see what happens here. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm also mainly focusing on the face of... for anyone who doesn't know, this is Millennium, whatever you want to call her, from Elden Ring. Because thinking there's not that much live-action stuff I actually enjoy watching. Not that it's bad, it's just that so much of it is either angry politics discussions, like really, really trashy reality TV shows, or just hyper grimdark, like, misery fest. And, like, I don't know. I'm sure there's stuff out there that isn't those three things, but none of those are my jam. Like, that's not what I want to watch for entertainment. I guess I could watch the Lord of the Rings show. That might be good, but it's still going to be a little more intense than I really want for just relaxing stuff. I've realized I am definitely the kind of person who tries to go all in on everything I do, but it means that when I'm resting, I want to actually rest. I don't want deep thought, heavy theme stuff, because that's a thing to do when you're focusing. It's, don't get me wrong, all that stuff's important and good, but it's not well, it's just not really relaxing, is it? At least not for me. I don't get catharsis in the same way. I don't know. At least the way people have described catharsis to me straight up just doesn't work for me at all. Like, I don't get it. The idea that watching other people undergo misery so that you can, I don't know, relate to it, I guess, or see that other people have that, or I don't know, maybe some people just enjoy watching the process. I don't know. None of it works. I hate watching other people be miserable. It's not satisfying. The kind of catharsis where it's like got a resolution at the end is a little different, but so much of the stuff that's like, oh yeah, it's just cathartic watching the like hyper violence. I'm like, yeah, if that does it for you, go for it. It just doesn't work for me. It just makes me more stressed. It's like stinking. A lot of people recommended Shield Hero to me. And, like, don't get me wrong, it's clearly, from what I've seen, well written, although the slavery themes are beyond problematic, but that's sort of the point, is it's trying to be gritty. But the whole point of it is it's supposed to revel in so much misery that, like, it finally builds up, and you know that at some point, or at least you hope, that the people who have caused the pains are going to get their comeuppance, but it takes so long to get there that no amount of resolution is actually going to satisfy it. Like, it's just misery. You know what else does it for me? And it's insane to group these two things together. Y'all know the movie It's a Wonderful Life? It's not a wonderful movie. At least not for me. A lot of people love it. But that movie, the villain gets away with stealing 10 grand, and 95% of the movie is misery. Like, just a real misery fest. But, like, 5% at the end, story-wise, yes, resolves it and goes on into a happy future. But in terms of, like, the emotional experience of watching that film, it does not make up for the misery. Like, at the end, I was still mostly mad and miserable. It did not feel resolved. And maybe that's a me thing. Maybe this is like going to be like crazy unpopular opinion, or maybe it's not. Maybe other people actually don't like that movie. I really don't like that movie. Not that the acting's bad; it's phenomenal. Not all of it is executed well. The writing is good. It's just for me personally, it's not that it doesn't emotionally resonate. It resonates too much and then doesn't calm the tuning fork. Like, the resonance on a tuning fork. This is a weird. I guess the word matches. I guess it's not the worst analogy in the world. I should actually draw something. I've been sitting here talking for like 15 minutes. That is going to be the problem with this kind of illustration thing, is I might have to go quiet longer just to actually, like, think and plan a little bit and get, like, my, like, arm positioning and everything proper for it. It's, like, definitely different from Blender being back on the tablet. So this is going to take me some getting used to. In fact, I may. Oops. I guess some of the built-in stuff from the graphics card, which I don't use at all. Maybe I should. Maybe I should, but I don't. So, let's see. Based on posture tips, I shouldn't be on the edge of my seat like I am, and I shouldn't be hunched over like I'm gonna go ring some bells at Notre Dame. That's unfair. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. And also, I guess Notre Dame probably... Well, actually, the bell towers survived. They're fine. Well, okay. Fine is a loose word, but they're intact, and hopefully en route to recovery. Let's see. Yeah, PureRef is definitely easier to use than this one built in because it just kind of fills up a lot of my canvas. I should have set that up in advance as an alternative. Oh well. Let's see. So what I'm trying to do right now, for the record, what I've been like haphazardly doing while talking and then forgetting, is get the angle of the face. The challenge is that the helmet's angle is actually contradictory to that of the face. So I need to think this through, not stupid. And while I don't need to draw the top part of the face, I still need to make sure that the bottom part lines up in such a way that it makes sense that the rest of the head could be there. Like, you don't want to be drawing a head like this, and then like have a little hat that goes like that, and then the rest of the head's gone. People are going to ask questions about where the rest of the head went. When it's cartoony enough, they might not, but even then, like, you're expecting there should be something here. Like, where the head? So yeah, we're going to switch those away. Other differences, I changed a lot of stuff on this one, so it's going to be pretty experimental, but hopefully still good. Wonder if I can just flip this thing. Hey, okay. It is interesting how much less dramatic the pose feels that way. I wonder if that's one of those, like, motion towards the right follows the direction we read and stuff, and so it feels more natural. Interesting. But also drawing a tilt at this angle is a little tougher for me. So, you know, we'll see. I'm just going to start outlining a possible head with proportions for now. And then I will adapt as I need to. But, like, I'm just trying to get this moving. Because, of course, the other thing is this isn't actually like a reference model. This is, admittedly, a very good, very high-fidelity 3D model. But it's not of a real person. At least I sure as heck. I mean, they probably had an actual, like, well, I don't know. They may or may not have had an actual model for it. I feel like if they had a Malenia model, actually, they wouldn't make it public because people would creep on her. Okay, yeah, no, fair. Or also they might have to pay royalty rights. Either way. But the point being is that this is a 3D model, so even if it's not like an actual like human reference, which is something to work on. Or just to take into account. Definitely better to do actual ref when possible. But we're just having fun with it right now. And I am mostly just trying to... I'm going to just loose this in, make sure I sort of figure out where everything's supposed to be relative to everything else. Like this right here, this is useful. Because I know this is supposed to hook out below the chin, but then it comes all the way up to the hair connect point, which makes me think, because the angle of this feels slightly off, that the angle of the neck that I've got going on here is also potentially a little off. Let's see, if the nose would be about there at the point... or let's see, hold on. If we're actually thinking about like a human head. Typically, eyes are halfway, and the nose lands there. A lot of hair going on here. Or like a really grand beard that like blows. Face structure there may actually be a little off. Nose being too low primarily, but... So I'm trying to go off of memory as the old Loomis head from, what was it, Andrew Loomis, I believe? He was an artist in like the 30s and 40s. And just wrote an excellent guide on what it's like doing art in the industry and the ideal proportions for like industry posters and stuff. They're not necessarily actual, like, they won't represent everyone perfectly. They're designed to be idealized forms, but they're not a bad baseline. And then you can tweak, like once you get good enough at it, which is not where I'm at, but you can basically adjust like to account for the differences between that ideal model and real people, while still using the model to get the fundamental proportions right, and at least figure out where stuff should be. Let's see. That's fairly thin, and it doesn't really taper. Actually, it's not that thin. Bottom two are thin, and because they're in the light, it makes the whole thing look thin. But there is this third piece that is actually just up here and is straight up like chunkin'. Okay. That basically resolves up in. Let's see. Light chin. Well, the chin protrusion is still flat at the bottom for the most part. Nose goes up. Presumably would have eyes like here. Oh, jeepers. That's a look. This is one of those things, accidentally over-exaggerating the chin, because so many things straight up ignore the chin, like a lot of styles just don't include it. And so to include it on a like cartoony layer almost inherently brings more attention to it than you want, which is interesting. Okay. No. Alright, hold on. First off, rather than just guessing at it, let's think this through. A, mouth position may or may not be right. I've not really plotted that out, and I should have if I'm doing a proper illustration. But B, what I can get right is mouth angle, which is not that. If you look, so what I'm looking at is specifically the middle line, not lips, but just like it is downward sloped technically, but it's sort of like that. This one goes up and over, and this one is kind of like faint and down. Because on this brush, I'm not really using the pressure sensitivity that I so painstakingly set up, so it's not looking great. Other thing, well, that may be correct, too far back for, like, not inherently for a human, but for this particular character. The top protrudes more than the chin. Which also reveals that most likely the nose is a little off too, which isn't a shock because it was just sort of thrown down. And this goes back to where I should use proportions on this head if I really want to go any further with it. So let's actually break out those idealized proportions. I got the book with me. And we're going to run through a Loomis head real quick. If you watched Proko, who's another one of the like a major YouTube and online like drawing tutorial person, definitely recommend if you want like professional ability to draw people. He's got excellent guides. Although he does heavily emphasize like gesture drawing, and I do actually kind of agree with like I can never remember their name because it's not Live Laugh Love. It's like Live Love Drawing or something like that. But they make the excellent point that while gesture is the first thing that a lot of people do when starting an illustration, that doesn't mean it's the first thing you should learn. You've kind of already got to figure out anatomy and a bunch of other junk before you can even like get to that one. You can always do it earlier, but it's something like it's not a prereq to the others. You can like skip it and come back to it, and it'll improve your drawing when you learn it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like an essential prerequisite, you know? So like with that in mind, he's got excellent like fundamentals of anatomy and stuff on YouTube, and much longer and larger paid courses, but you really don't need those. He's got so much on the actual web. So I think we can put this away for now. This is the downside of using the vector and not just doing what I should have and using a normal eraser for this. Oop. Okay, so to follow the Loomis guide, because there's actual proportions to follow here, And it's at least a starting point that I should be using. Yeah, see, slow circles are a mistake. Quick circle. There we go. Better. Whoops, assuming I don't accidentally erase the whole thing. There we go. Not a perfect circle, but it will do for our purposes. So following the Loomis guide, basically, the guide puts a tilt on it, and because I'm trying to demonstrate without like putting my own spin on this piece, really, I'm not going to stray from that. So we'll start roughly mid-top, and this line kind of is coming down. This is going to be the center line of the face. And we'll figure out exactly how far it needs to come down in a minute. Because the other thing we need is following this tilt, so like perpendicular to it at the front, and coming around the side, around the other side. And then basically there's the third one. So we're taking the three, like if you have a sphere, you can divide it along 3 axes, basically. But you can divide it along as many as you want. But if you think about the blender tool, you've got X, Y, and Z. This is basically dividing the sphere along X, Y, and Z. So like you could make a cube along this. Enough. I'm assuming you actually follow the lines and aren't just like blustering through it like I'm doing with this demo. You can also do it with a sphere. But the easiest way to demo that with a sphere, cheapers, is using these lines to show how it's bisected by each axis, basically. But instead of just doing a sloppy like 3-second thing, you actually plan it out. There we go. Single smooth line when you go fast. We'll do the same thing for this one. Figuring out how to do this, I wish I had a better like instructions other than just kind of getting your eye in, because I'm clearly not doing it perfectly either. And in case you somehow hadn't noticed that. Right. So the other thing to think about the curve is that it's going to start, like every time it crosses one of the other lines, it's going to start turning the other way. So like if we think about it this way, this is sort of like climbing up, climbing up, climbing up, and it's at this point that it starts climbing down, climbing down, climbing down, and it's at this one that it goes from moving more to the right towards moving more to the left. Of course, the tilt of this throws it off a little, but that's, But the point is, we bisect it like that. And then, let's see. Basically, we're going to be taking this front line, and once it reaches this point, instead of tilting down, or instead of curving down, rather, we are just going to do a straight line. And then we're going to divide. I'm going to try to find the brow line, which will be roughly there. If you want the exact, like the brow line is supposed to be like, if you divided this into 6th, there's 1/6, 4/6, and then the last 6th, and the brow line is at like the 1/6 from the top along this side. Not the easiest thing in the world to just eyeball though. And it's so much harder doing this digitally. Yowza. I gotta work on my digital pen control. I let myself get really rusty for a while there. And it's not like I had the strongest control over it from the get-go. But what we can do with this is now that once we get 2 in, then we basically just want to do equidistant divisions further down the line. So A to B, so if this is length A and this is B, yeah, that's right, math class, you're welcome. We're going to try to make it so A, B, and C are equal in length. This is one of the things where, sure, it's the ideal proportions, actual human faces may vary, but generally we'll follow it. And then this side, there's a little more about like flattening off the side, but that's not as important for what I'm looking at right now. What I mainly want to focus on is if you're getting the jaw, then it's going to come down from roughly either the 1/6 from the bottom or just somewhere in this little section of this side, and you get the jaw coming down. This is where the slicing off the sides is useful, but at this angle, it's not going to be super visible from that side, so it'll basically just evenly come down. And since C is the chin, sort of do that. And then you can sort of line up everything on the face from this. Like this one becomes the brow. This one, hold on. I'm still just trying to get the hang of this. So if I really want to be doing fine lines, I need to be adjusting my pen tilt a little bit. Okay, there we go. There we go. Just because I made the pen doesn't mean I know how to use it yet. That's our brow line. This one up here is going to be the hairline. There we go. And then you can sort of figure out eyes are going to live in the middle section of B, because that, if you know, the eyes are like the halfway point of the head. And since we've made 3 equidistant sections, halfway in the middle of those is the halfway point of the head. Well, angled that line did not curve with the face, but if you're curving with the face, the halfway is right here. So the eyes are going to be right in the middle. They're about the middle third, depending on who you ask or who you're looking at. The bottom of the nose lands here. So you end up with eye, nose. Like mouth, lips area is about 2/3 from the bottom of C, so right about here. Mouth. Got our big bushy eyebrows or whatever. We've got maybe slightly less terrifyingly small eyes. Mouth width is about to the middle of each eye vertically on the face. Like this, despite being clearly nonsense, still registers as like a human face. Oh. A little something there, I don't know. At this point, it doesn't really matter. It's just a diagrammy thing, which I shouldn't have done on the same layer. But honestly, I think we ought to restart from scratch now that we've refreshed on our fundamentals here. And let's just get ourselves a new layer going in here. Bunch of fun nonsense there. Let's actually do it now. Maybe. We'll see. Or maybe we'll reset again. That's all fine. That's all part of it. We're getting back into the groove of things. So let's see. I'm getting up on the edge of my chair again. Gotta not do that. It's a natural posture thing I developed in college, and I need to undo. Got a decent grip. Pardon me. Sorry about that. Just gonna drink some water, because that's not sickness. That's literally just dry. I don't let myself. Wow, it's 8:30 something already. Jeepers. Oh yeah. So again, this is not a one-day stream. I'm just trying to get a decent sketch out of it at this point, honestly, and then we'll like build off of that. We'll build like a. This is going to be like the rough draft of the paper. Then we'll do the final draft, and then we'll do like an actual like making it look good. Honestly, we're not even on rough draft. We're on like outlining, where you're still got like a pile of sources and you're like trying to organize how they're going to fit into an outline. That's what we're doing right now. We'll have a cleaned up outline hopefully by the end of the week. And then we'll go on and start like actually doing our drafts, which will be when we're getting like actual pens and colors and stuff. And then, yeah, we'll do ink, digital ink. Okay, but looking at this one, I did a slow head again. Okay. I mean, look, obviously, I have the power to just, like, meh. But, like, that's not actually the important part. Having a perfect circle is not the important part. Can I not undo that? Okay. Let's see, have I got on center axis? And honestly, like, especially if you average it out, that's not the worst circle I've drawn. You like pop it over here. It's just like one little wonky bit. It's all in how you frame it. But the point is not that. The point is that I'm just trying to get like not so rough that the proportions are bad, but it's okay if this is not like a precise 100% thing. That said, I will go ahead and clean up. See, it's a worse line there. It's a worse wobble line, but since this is just a proportion guide, whatever. And trying to get the tilt of the head here is important, because most of this circle is actually going to get stinking covered up. So it looks like this is basically a profile view. Like, it's not 100%, but it's like 95% profile, which means that this center line is going to be way out here close to the edge. If you're full profile, then it's literally on the edge. You just drag it down, and you're like, okay, profile, chin, neck, so on. I still draw really weird long necks. I'm fine with that, though. But we're not quite profiled. This has just a little bit of angle to it. And so I'm going to try something like, maybe even like a little more curve pop. Okay, no, that one was bad. Closer to the edge, closer to the edge. Okay, like this, except pick up the curve, or pick up the straight a little sooner. Because ultimately, if we're looking at the actual axis on this, her head is also tilted very, very faintly forward. Like, not enough that I can even tell if it's just like her jaw shape or the angle of the head, but I think it's tilted slightly forward. Partly, you know, because she's leaning into the pose. It's supposed to be a dramatic pose. I think this one's from the trailer. Which, I mean, she's both super cool and also, the more we learn about her, a problematic fave, as every single character in Elden Ring is, and all the Souls games. Like, be careful picking a favorite faction. If you think you found the faction of the good guys, you probably... I mean, they have a reasonable opinion, most of them, not all of them. Dung Eater's an idiot, but, like, most of them. He's not an idiot, he's just actively malicious. He's a sadist. But most of them, and even going back to, like, Dark Souls 1 and before, like, there's shades of gray. Boletaria kind of less, I'm going to be honest. Maybe not Demon Souls. It's, like, obviously within the individual bosses, there's a lot of shades of gray. But if you're talking about the one who started the whole mess, no, it's pretty stinking clear. He's not acting nice. But in, like, Dark Souls, there's the light and the dark. And here's my hot take on it. People are so fixated on the light being a deception, and therefore, like, the dark is obviously the truth and the way to go, that they're not thinking it through either. Like, obviously the light has a lot of problems. It led to this Age of Fire. It led to oppression and hierarchy. It led to... well, I mean, obviously the disaster that's happening now with everything. But that doesn't inherently mean the dark is good. Like, just because your current option is bad doesn't make the other option good. You may have an option between bad and worse, and you're choosing worse. Like, and it's not like... Look, Frampt is not trustworthy. Dude lies. But Kaith is also definitely not trustworthy, and runs a murder cult. So, like, I'm not sure that he's great either. I'm just throwing that out there. And, like, that extends through all the series, really. Like, all the Dark Souls into Elden Ring. All the endings have issues. And they've always got long themes of the issue that civilization inherently brings hierarchy, which inherently brings suffering. And it really screws a lot of things up. But that doesn't change the fact that lack of quote-unquote civilization, which, be careful how you define that or you'll land in the territory of stinking, like, 1930s racists again. But, like, the idea that organizing and creating and building things is inherently bad and we should do none of it is also an issue and also leads to suffering. So, like, and now it's, like, it's all complicated and screwed up. Especially getting the Ring City DLC or modern natural damages. Like, neither option is a pure and easy fix. You need to find a balance between the two. And it's one of those things where, you know how a lot of times when people say they want to find a compromise or a balance between the two, they're talking about, they've got, like, their chart, and you've got, like, A, and you've got B, and they're, like, somewhere in the middle is, like, the perfect balance. Maybe it's not in the middle, maybe it's over here, maybe it's over here, but somewhere there is this ideal balance. But frequently that's not the case, and it kills me, because I like stuff being technical and like, precise. I really do. As much as I'm trying to do hand-drawn circles, that's because I'm trying to train myself to be okay with stuff that isn't precise. Like, I love technical and precise and accurate stuff. Stuff with a clear right answer. And there sometimes, like, the acceptable parts of A go here, and the acceptable parts of B go here, and so anything between is good. But sometimes it's like this, and you're like, okay, this is bad, because it's, like, it's where A is overbearing. This is bad, because it's where B is overbearing. This has them both, but to a lesser degree. So is there some balance in here where they can either play off of each other, or we've got something decent Like, because there's no perfect fix. And that's where it is with, like, civilization and nature and stuff. There is no perfect balance, but there are ways to keep it maintained and running without achieving perfection and without needing perfection. Because who was it? I'm sure this is a misattributed quote, but Voltaire was the one who was talking about, like, well, it's not just him. Don't let perfect kill good, you know? If I waited to be perfect until I started streaming, you know, theoretically y'all would have better streams, but the real answer is you would have no streams, because I would never start. And yeah, I'd like to get better. You know, there's a lot of stuff about my art I want to improve. But if I'm waiting until I do that, it's stinking never going to happen. I need to actually do and work on it. And that's where we're at, stinking with politics and with everything, is we're waiting to find the perfect, because our options, honestly, at this point, it feels like we're waiting to find the decent, because our options are so garbage on a lot of stuff. But even so, there is still ways to keep things running while we seek better. Like, we can keep it functioning at a good level while we seek to improve it. We don't need to stinking burn, like, just set the whole stinking ship ablaze because it isn't perfect. We're all living on it. We're gonna drown if you do that. Make tweaks, deal with the fact that it's still leaky and janky and not that good of a boat, and, like, work with people to at least row in the same stinking direction for 5 minutes so we're not lost to the ocean forever. I'm a little incensed about American politics, if it isn't obvious. And once again, not the topic for here, definitely not the topic for the internet. Not because it isn't worth discussing, but because the internet will not lead to good discussions. These days, since politics has so much controversial and heated stuff in it, you kind of need to already be familiar with attributes of the other person you're talking to know whether or not when they say a certain word, they mean it in a hostile way, in an extreme way, or have a more moderate interpretation. And, like, the only way to really tell is either a very long discussion in which you get to know the person, or already knowing the person. The internet doesn't allow for either. It doesn't allow good long discussions. It definitely doesn't allow knowing who you're talking to. And because it's a public forum, you end up not just having, like, good, like, one-on-one or small group discussions, but anyone can jump in, either because they see like, maybe they have good intentions and they see partway through, but they've missed all of the context of the discussion up to that point, so they see the buzzwords and interpret them differently, and it blows something up because they say something that you interpret differently. Or they come in with active malicious intent, either because they're part of an extremist group, or they're an active separate group that wants to sabotage stuff here. Plenty of both on the internet. And it's a place, you got everything. It could just be someone who's very young and doesn't know better. Or someone who's, like, older and still doesn't know better because they had different life experiences that weren't buried in stinking politics. Like, you know. Age gets you an experience, but it doesn't get everyone experiencing the same things. And you've really got to respect where experience actually is. Same thing with, like, well, fame doesn't give you experience or authority at all, just full stop. Just because someone's famous doesn't mean they know anything. They might happen to be right, but they're not more or less likely to be right than anyone else who's stinking meat on the street, you know? Same goes for being rich. Having money doesn't make you smart. And being smart doesn't inherently get you money. The idea that you have to be smart in order to get money is also wildly incorrect. So, I don't know. People take a lot of things as sources of authority that stinking are not sources of authority. And it's annoying. But, you know, we all have different ideas about that, and I'm obviously not here to actually get into politics in any specificity. Or, well, you know, I'm sure comments would have been very engaged and, bad. just bad. They'd have just been bad. Okay, so hold on. So if we're talking here, I need to actually think through roughly my heights. Although actually rotating to account for this, there's not much tilt in the face. I've got to be honest. Okay, so we will just keep it at roughly. Oh, I never realized how much I tilt my pen to the side if I'm anchoring my arm on the. Oh, I'm anchoring arm on the desk. Weird. That's okay. Okay. So we've got kind of a brow line there. That's. I don't think that angle's right. Brow line. We're going to go for mostly vertical in this one with maybe a very slight tilt favoring looking up. But it's difficult to tell if that's because our perspective is under her or the actual angle of the face, at least for me. So I'm going to leave it mostly neutral. And so knowing that, we've once again got our 4 line divisions. We've got right at the center of the circle. This is just like the Loomis head we did earlier. We've got this one that was an eyeballed center. Whoops, nope, I still want that line. But I want this to roughly be the same length as that, which it still isn't. And then one more. Clear that out. Because there are kind of 2 lines that come off the chin. There's one that goes up to the ear, and then there's one that like goes down to the neck. And depending on the angle you're looking at someone, those may seem to go different directions. Or they may seem to overlap differently, but roughly speaking, that's what we're looking at. Let's see. It looks like presumably ear would be there, but like the neck really isn't connecting. I'm connecting it too far forward is my point. Like not a lot too far forward, but a bit. And again, we've got a slight under perspective going on here. Like a little bit that's like from this. Yeah. Again, those I've just sort of roughed and eyeballed in. They're not set in stone yet. Okay, so we've got brow line here. Which again, we're not actually going to see on Malenia. And that wasn't to avoid drawing eyes, it's actually to take on the challenge of drawing armors with different textures once we get to the, like, coloring phase. I'm not going to pretend I'm a pro at eyes, but I'm not afraid to attempt them, you know? Okay. We got nose here. Oh, by the way, brow ridge kind of comes in. Like, in, out, in. And I can tell from here, like, just barely. You can see like a bit of nose there and coming down. So her nose is like actually kind of up a fair bit and curves and tilts down. She's got, everyone has this technically, but like a little bump on the end of the nose that I'm so bad at illustrating consistently because most of the time when I'm drawing faces, they're small as part of a larger drawing. And that means that I don't have enough space to actually get details like that in there. At least not unless I have a smaller point pencil and a better pencil control. Okay. But also knowing, because we're on this under view, that we can kind of see underneath a little bit. This connects here. We've got mouth at roughly the 2/3 from the bottom. Chin roughly the bottom third here. No, because that can't be the case, because the position of lips and chin wouldn't work if the chin is only bottom third. Okay. This is the thing, is the mouth always takes up more space than I expect it to, and so I'm never quite sure where that line needs to align with it, but we can do relative to nose here. This only comes out to about under. As we determined, this actually like arcs down a little bit, but also not all the way to the front. This line is going to be much smaller than the one on the top. That one's bigger, and down here is smaller. Just kind of that. Once again, the upward angle of this makes it a little more complicated because the lip is going to like tilt up. I'm trying to smooth this line's transition in, and I've ended up just going over it like 60 times, which isn't ideal, but you know, it is what it is. I'm going to at least make this like normal eye sized. It can still be a stinking black orb, but it needs to be like this so I can tell proportions. Let's see. Okay, side control still good. Pressure control still good. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting how the center of the stroke versus the scatter kind of reveals Once you're in that way. Okay. Oh, this is going to be such a terrible speed paint video to watch. Oh, well. Okay. But the point is, this is something we can work with now. So I think, let's look at relative distances. Bottom of nose to chin versus this to like where the neck starts to turn back into the shoulder, and with the lighting are roughly the same. So I'm going to try to match those reasonably. This will arc forward, but it will not come more forward than either this spike or necessarily the actual point where that angle happens. So I'm not getting enough tilt on this is what I'm seeing. That has to tilt more so that when this arcs forward, it lands basically back where it was. That's the biggest key with proportions, and I'm not great at it, but I'm getting better at it, is it's all, well, proportional to other things in the scene. Like if you're trying to actually figure this stuff out, you need to be paying attention to not necessarily like objective proportions, but like literally, like you are mapping a 3D scene onto a 2D scene, or at least something that looks 3D to your eyes onto something that is 2D. And so you basically, you can't think, as much as you need to know the 3D shapes, you also, when you're actually putting on paper, need to be thinking about it as 2D and just purely where stuff is relative to other stuff. Okay, so this seems to be connecting and going back up at about the height of the mouth. And the angle roughly matches this one, so that's going to chuck that there. Put our up curve somewhere further, like here. It looks a little weird, but I'm going to say it's probably fine, because we're not dealing with that, and I don't know that the model is necessary. Like, the model having it the way it is also looked kind of weird to me. So it's possible we're seeing, like, ear connect or something, but that should probably be a tad higher, truthfully, based on where ears and eyes usually line up. Truthfully, the eye does look a little high up in the face. Probably ought to be, like, a little lower. Oh, there's a lot of lines there. It lags every time I try to erase it. Oops. Sorry, Vector Eraser. I've given you a lot of work. The edge on that. Theoretical eyebrows. And yeah, because we're on this borderline, not quite, but very basically functionally profile, we're really not going to see the other eye or like the other part of the head over here. If we were on like a 3/4 view, which I like drawing 3/4 view, they're very expressive. Generally speaking, the art community likes 3/4 view. There we go, that's a better circle. But yeah, 3/4 view, and then we do all the same stuff. I'm just gonna like well, no, hold on. I'll just do like the splits basically. That one's too low. I can already tell. Okay. There's split, there's split, there's split, there's split. Middle point. And then this is one where it's really important to actually do that trimming of the sides I talked about earlier. You got to make sure they match the like side tilt of the rest of the head, or else it doesn't work. Okay. But then this can come down and to there. This from the center can come down to there. And the point of this, the point of me talking about this at all, so here's our brow line. There's our eyebrows. There's your eyes. And it's going to come in and the nose will come out. And then you've got like mouth. But you're going to be able to see both eyes on this. Even if you have a more extreme a more extreme view where it's like considerably less of it is here, you'll still be able to see the other eye. Like you've got one eye here, and you'll see the other one. It'll be partly obstructed by the nose, but it'll be there. See the difference when you actually plan out the proportions versus don't? It makes a huge difference in the final quality, I gotta say. Just gonna put both of those away. Gotta practice not getting too attached to the art too, especially when they're just practice stuff like that to figure out references. Well, that's not an ominous eye at all. We'll leave it. ear, I think, should be somewhere around here, or possibly... I've forgotten where exactly ear placement goes in this whole schema. This is just one way to draw a human head. This is obviously not the only way to draw a human head. There's a ton of ways. But as someone who likes technical stuff, I like to be able to follow technical guides. Okay, so this sort of edge of the shadow comes out not quite to the chin, goes up to roughly here. Top of the fluff comes out a little further. I think this one actually ends up coming out more to here. Kind of makes you wonder if she at one point had a Blythe of her own, but I'm sure it was just wolves. I mean, if you look at where the Hallig tree is based, plenty of... Actually, holy cow, how do they field a competent army at the Hallig tree at all? Like, even regardless of the massive rot problem, temperatures are bad. Like, really bad. Okay, and then you've got, like, kind of pokey bits. This lines up under the neck here. Put that little oddball there. This lines up folding out under and comes up roughly to the height, like slightly above the height of that, actually. So this is why it's important to get the initial proportions right, too, because when you're building everything, you're sort of hanging everything else off of those initial proportions. So you do want to make sure you get them right, or you'll have to rework stuff. But it also means that technically, as long as you're like your very first thing could be whatever, because everything else should be based on it. So whatever it is, it'll just be the foundation, and it's only like the second line is the one that it's hard to make sure is right. Okay. Okay, yeah, see, that needs to come out further. So this needs to be further down. See, without even thinking about it, I just eyeballed where that little loop was, and it put the whole angle of that piece wrong. It needs to be like roughly in alignment with that. Just if you drew a straight line coming up from this, kind of arcs it down even. There we go. Got kind of its little tab there. There we go, that's better. I'm just sort of penciling in on this point just so I've got it as reference, and because it's a nice little brainless, like comparatively brainless doodle when I'm doing this degree of sketching. This angle is horribly wrong, as it, you know, not really a shock there. Okay, this is going to come up to the point of height, slightly above the neck bend, so good. That's going to go as far out as past this hook. Okay, good, it's about right. And then this point, before it cuts off, only gets down to slightly above where the neck enters, so that's mostly fine. Slight bit of texture depth to that. Circle coming in about here, smaller circle coming in about there. Got our leaf pattern that I'm really not going to try to line up, we're just... Yeah, just throwing that one in. We got our edge of scene. Like, it takes a little more time, and it's a little tedious, but... Doing this means that, I don't know, everything actually ends up in the right place. Mostly. Like, obviously you can see, like, the tilt of this is off. Which I should have accounted for sooner. It tilts far enough over to be over this single dot, even. So it ought to be here. This should probably get a little more, and I gotta scoot all that. See, I got too caught up in details before we'd actually gotten the outer, like, the alignment sorted. Yeah, the fluff comes down, and then obviously hair is going to be a thing. Well, I'm going to deal with hair and helmet on their own layer, truthfully. Because they're, like, overlaid on this head format. But, because the hair is kind of dependent on some of this other stuff, helps to get this stuff penciled in first. Yeah, there we go. And it comes up just slightly above where the fur lands. And the fur kind of does more of a like this on this side. And then there's just shadow. A lot of just shadow, actually, truthfully. We'll do more than just shadow once we get everything lined up. I shouldn't overcommit to just shadow before I'm ready for everything else. Speaking of, once again, that habit of getting caught up in details before I've lined everything up and then having to redo said details because they're in the wrong place. I am real bad about that. Yeah, because this circle needs to be above that and like roughly in line with this fold of the fabric anyway. So why did I think it looked lined up earlier? Okay, and once again, we're not actually lining up these particular decor bits. I can color. Oops. I can color that one in. That's fine. Actually, that part can be pretty dark. But there's still like a little bit of it visible over there. Okay. We'll come back. We'll outline helmet and hair after we take a little break, drink some water, stand up, stretch, all that jazz. And then hopefully we'll have a decent alignment sketch for this. And either starting at the end of this stream or picking up at the next one, we'll be able to start getting into some better details and really, like, instead of these roughs, we'll be able to use these roughs as a foundation, and we can be confident in our proportions because we planned them out in advance. That said, there's one thing I've noticed that I want to try to either tweak or at least leave a note for, and it's while this part is decent, and this is going to be a shoddy fix to it, you'll notice that the tilt is different. Like, the image, there is a slight, like, angle to it. So I'm going to use the power of digital tools, and lag, apparently. This brush causes some lag. I need to think about that. To add that tilt, and then we're going to have to fix how it aligns with the nose, how it aligns with the eye, the tilt of the mouth, all of that. But at the very least, the silhouette of the face will be more accurate now. Okay. I'm going to go on a quick little pause now for probably about 5 minutes, and I hope that I see y'all on the flip side. Howdys and salutations! We are back! Thanks for waiting during our pause. Oh hey, Scopic, how are you? Thanks for dropping by! We were just about to jump into, well, not the selectee tool. We're just doing like rough outlines right now. Eventually we get to a proper illustration here at Malenia. Hopefully. Let's see. Cool, that's that layer. I need to actually start labeling my layers or these are going to get nasty. But yeah, welcome to the stream. Okay, good. For a second I thought my headset audio broke, but it did not. I just wasn't saying anything, which makes the bar not show up. I guess that is rather logical, isn't it? That tracks. Okay, rough one. I'm just calling this one like warm up because it all that really was. Let's go to rough hair / helm. Maybe we'll split those out, maybe we won't. Rough head / armor. We'll start with that. Okay, let's see, we got our custom pencil brush. Hey, getting back into the groove of that a little bit. Okay. Let's do this. Let's zoom in and figure out exactly how this helmet's going to line up. I'm doing the helmet first. I know the hair is under it, and when we're getting to like colors and final inks and all that jazz, we're definitely doing the hair under the helm. But for this one, the hair is really kind of loosey-goosey in terms of its relative position to other stuff, or at least it's harder to nail down. So I'm going to start with the helm, because I think that's going to be the more important piece. I'm also going to drop the opacity on that, just a hair. And let's see. Okay, so the ear is assumed. I can't really use that as an actual reference. What I can use is this sort of back point of the neck we've established. It's a little low, but it tracks what's in the game, at least what I'm referencing as it, and so the point is that this is the point. So this is roughly, like, not quite as high up and not quite as back as it where this connects, but we can still use it as a reference point for where the chin strappy piece starts to come down. And I know we never fully finalized the chin, but I believe it's roughly correct. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of face focal points to work with on Malenia. We can get vertical relative to the mouth, and horizontal is just going to have to be relative to the neck. That's fine. We'll work with that. That curve really is right about where that starts to happen anyway. We got that, we got that. And this comes up to here, and it's got like a very slight swoosh motion to it. This one just curves up. But yeah, okay, let's keep on going with that. And this will be the first of our illustrations that, I mean, look, assuming that the tech works and I didn't botch it in setting it up, we're going to try to actually reveal this as a speed paint, which is going to be so terrible, but it'll be very funny. Given, like, the first half of this stream we spent on... I'm getting rid of this ear line. It's confusing and not actually a real reference. Okay. But yeah, we spent, like, the first half of the stream just refreshing on, like, proportion principles. So that's going to look weird, but yeah, it'll be fine. Okay. Other good reference point we have is, once again, at roughly this middle point and roughly the same height is kind of the undercurve of this, like, piece of the helm. And we know where it lands relative to the nose, which is roughly here. And we know that it then extends out further, roughly, like, not quite as far. Like, that extends down that distance. This needs to extend out slightly less. So its kind of final point is going to be there. We'll get rid of some of these reference lines here. Don't need those. But yeah. If y'all have any questions, obviously, look, I don't grade on participation. If you don't want to say a word, you don't have to say a word. Lurkers are more than welcome. But I'm also welcome to all feedback, good or bad. I mean, about the art. I don't necessarily need everyone's opinion on like lifestyle or whatever, but at least as far as the drawing is concerned, I am open to tips, suggestions, criticisms, comments, bizarre noises, whatever. Whatever floats your boat, suits your fancy. How do you suit a fancy? Like, fancies aren't, like, that's not a tangible thing. How do you make a suit for it? I'm not sure this is a useful train of thought to follow. I think we're just going to abandon that. Like, I still stand by the question. I just don't think that we're going to get a good answer today. Okay, how far out does this go? Roughly over the... I think that's right. Roughly the same amount over as the width of this chin piece, and that's tracking pretty well. So, okay, we'll have just like a little faint, that's not a final line there, that's just to help me remember what piece of the helmet that is. Let's see, this stuff isn't as important, even though it's technically in the final illustration, it's 90% shadow, there's not that much of import there. Like, even, like, let's zoom way up on that. I think that is head. Not ear. I don't think it's hair. Just like a little funky. That's all good. Okay. Now to angle this other piece here, we know that it starts almost at the same point as this. It gets down roughly as low in its kind of center point, as low as the bottom of the nose, and it connects back up right above the edge of the mouth. So that's going to be about there. Got like a slight slope, like up and down into it. And we'll go. Yeah, y'all can see that I'm still definitely kind of amateur at this stuff. But I'm trying to think through and make sure that we're making these lines right, so that next time they'll be a little more natural, a little easier to do. And each time after that, it'll just be easier and easier, I hope. Like, I don't, you know, I'm going off of what other people with more experience have said. I can't actually guarantee squat, but, like, you know. Okay. But we can see under the helm a little bit that this actually continues out, like, continues its curve. And lands like roughly above this sort of like the ball of the nose. So that's gonna end up being something like that, isn't it? That's a little exaggerated. I think it's gonna more like that. Yeah. Okay, so that'll do something like that. And we know that this really only comes back in again. At this point, getting the actual overall shape of the helmet, we're just gonna have to eyeball a little bit, thinking about head shape and tilt, because there's not a lot of other reference points we have to go on. I know that the final front piece does not end up more far out than this. It also does end up fairly far out from the front of that. And it should be... Hey, welcome back! Welcome back! I'm also back now. Let's see. Nope, see, that's not enough tilt. We may have the head orb a little too big because we didn't do the straightening or like that you'd usually do with a proper Loomis head type style thing. But also, I'm noting, aha, this slant isn't consistent over the whole back. This reference image may not have it, and it might have been good to get more than one reference image for this, but we didn't, so we're working with it. Thanks! Yeah, we're just doing like really rough sketching in right now. We'll do like a more final sketch probably next stream based on the pace we're going. And then we'll start getting the inks and colors and all that jazz. I'm not really put a time limit on this one. Like I'll just go until it's done. I'm gonna try to do one of them speed paint videos. I've got it doing the time-lapsey thing. We'll see how that goes. I've not done one before. Clip Studio Paint, which is what I'm using, has tools for it. I don't know if it's going to work right or not. Okay. I see where the tilt angle changes, but I don't really have another reference for it other than well above everything else. I guess kind of where, if this continued all the way up, kind of there. So that's about right. And then we get kind of like a little more of a curve. And then it just kind of comes out to almost, like it's not literally a point, but it kind of comes out like a crest here. Trying to figure out how to get that exact curve. Because this curve, Curves can be reduced to lines. I mean, obviously, yes, but when you're trying to figure out the angles of stuff that isn't just like a consistent arc, like even that isn't actually a consistent arc. There's kind of a straight patch there, straight tilt there, and then down. And so when I'm trying to figure out stuff for oblong shapes like this, I try to like angularize them. And you can obviously, as with anything, like you can do it to different degrees. Like you could take this curve and you could represent it as just a triangle. If you're only doing 2 lines, you could do a square that or 3 lines that's going to match it better and kind of be a trapezoid. You can keep doing more. So the trick is to get a level of detail that is useful. So I think for this one we've got, look, the back has basically a 45-degree tilt to it. And then it kind of arcs up a little bit. I know that this endpoint is vertically below this, so I'll need to make sure that my endpoint over here is somewhere along this line. And then this, it's got a slight up tilt, but it's mostly, like broadly speaking, that top part moves down. And then this, it basically just arcs straight down. I think I'm having trouble getting a grip around this section, because it's like, it's up a little bit, but it's a majority down, but it's still not as far down. Yeah, okay, I think, but yeah, we can cut this one off. Yeah, no, I mean, definitely we're definitely going to have, we're not following the head circle for that. I'm just trying to make sure I get the arcs of it right. You're absolutely right. Let's see, because what I've got here, it's too squatty in the back because it's following the head circle. And it means that it ends up arcing up here, which messes with the whole angle of the head. So, oops, come on, vector erase, let's do this. Oh, I guess that's just a stray line from from the underlying circle. Yeah, I definitely shouldn't be following random marks as a guideline. Okay, so I can sort of follow the same approach, and it will allow me to get to that, knowing that this ends below this. Not like crazy far below it, though. There still has to be space for this to arc in, and then also for that not work piece, which is going to be a doozy. We probably won't finalize the not work on here today. We're going to rough in where it ought to be and try to get as much as we can. But not necessarily priority. We're trying to figure out alignment and everything first. Let's see. Faster lines for curves, even if it takes a few try, always end up looking better than slower lines. That said, it really only needs to come to here. And then we've got like a nice curve on the front. And then kind of flares out a little bit. Let's see, this comes out to roughly above the nose. We're good. And then I'm not as worried about the rest of it. I'll just sort of rough that in with that line. Like it's got like a little point and so on. But, okay. Yeah, if it's not obvious, I take an overly technical approach to things, as I always have and always shall. Let's see. Okay. Get rid of that straight line. Smooths that out a little bit. All right, that's the intersection. I actually want that. Is that what you meant by extra circle to represent the helmet? Like not following the inner head circle, but actually making its own curve? Was I interpreting that right? Like, definitely give me a shout if I'm not interpreting you right. Let's see. Line up roughly with where it actually peeks out from under the helm. Height-wise, it's lined up roughly up here. This curve really has to kind of match. So it arcs in a little bit at what point? Oh, the arc in doesn't happen until it's already past the height of the helm. Okay. arcs in, then flares out again. Let's see. There we go. We've roughly got where that needs to land, I believe. Let's see. Okay. So the other trick is that this flare feels like it flares out, but really it still needs to fit within. Like you can see this natural slope, it's still inside this. Oh, I had to ask on your username, is it Scopic or Scopic? I'm really bad about just guessing at people's usernames. Like Lurks and Kittyna and Kitta and Drapsnat and Elsidra, which I think are all bots. If you're not, I'm sorry I judged you as a bot. You're welcome to lurk. We're happy to have you, but I have had a lot of just lurk bots lately, and I don't really know the point of them. I do remember one time I was in a stream. I'll take lurk bots over chat bots. I wasn't streaming, but I was a viewer on a stream one time where there was. We can't tell if it still was unclear if it was like. I'm pretty sure it was a bot. Its responses didn't make sense, but it would basically at random people in chat and make comments like, "Hey, long time no see," and then it would try to start conversations, but they were completely unintelligible and usually hostile. And like everyone was just like, "What is happening with this?" It was a weird time. A very weird time. I should not be dealing with this beyond just having a rough outline of it right now. I can get the actual like scroll work of this later. Let's see, this comes out to not quite as far as that. Good, that's lining up. Once you get more and more things on here, it's easier to get your reference points in because like you've got a lot more to work with, and it's sort of more obvious when you're looking. Let's see. This does seem to come up like a little higher even, potentially. This one arcs to roughly there. This one, and then these three kind of, oh yeah, it's even gonna arc like roughly this section here. And that height-wise should be ending up, Ruh-roh. Got a proportion or angle alert here, which I was starting to get a warning sign of from the knot work. It's most likely I made an error in the knots, but this particular thing also implies an angle to the tilt of the helm, which is very possible. Because this should be considerably lower than this, and I guess maybe it is. Maybe I just needed to zoom out. Maybe it is all good. And this height-wise is reasonable with like the arc in on that. And location-wise, and it's reasonable with that. Just that maybe I've got this circle like a hair too far over. Okay, well that's all fine. Then I think that's good, but that's what I just try to keep an eye out for. Okay. I'm still on eraser. Let's fix that. And we know that the top of the frame is somewhere there. Side of the frame. Let's try to actually get a vertical line on that if we can. And bottom is, I mean, we haven't done a lot of detail around this lower part, nor do we really plan to, but I can at least roughly get it in. So there we go. I think, okay, we still got to do the hair, but we're getting pretty close to having relative positions in on everything, which is frankly one of the, well, everything's a tricky part in its own way, but this is definitely one of the ones that I'm bad about getting lazy and skipping, and it really comes back to bite me every time. So let's deal with this hair. I'm not too worried about blocking in exact hair motions. I want to block in the silhouette. So we've got this. It kind of goes up. It's funny when I see it like this and it's got kind of like a transparency to it because it's the 3D model. It almost looks like the trail from like a Tron light cycle. Okay. Let's see. So that kind of curves up. I like to think of hair, and it's not the best approximation. There's a lot of different ways to think about it, but I think of hair sections as kind of ribbons, because you can see the way that there's kind of an edge and it folds under, and it follows a lot of the same sort of logic. At least for drawing. I don't know so well for actual like hair care. Don't listen to my tips on hair care. Or don't take my drawing tips as tips on hair care. I am patently not an expert. Okay, this one arcs up. Okay, even as high as that. Okay. Or basically following in on that. There's kind of like a little gap in there, but nothing crazy. Same down here for the record. No, there's a fair bit more that just comes out of the back and goes basically directly... Oh, rats. Okay. I thought the fur alignment was getting a little weirder, or a little more off. I guess that's the gap. What I actually need on this is to also have like the top edge of the fur, because it's kind of got like a tube shape to it. So if we're then thinking about that, and this goes directly towards that, it's less... Okay, that's more right. It is still too far to the right, truthfully. The top of the hair tube needs to be more over here. The actual hair alignment here. I say hair tube, it's fur. There we go. That's better. Alright, then we've got some other chunks further in the back here. This one kind of pulls up, goes up, not to the gap up there, but fairly high relative to the helm, actually, above this indent. And then it starts to curve in before this one, and breaks roughly as this one starts breaking down. This hair strand breaks up. And this one will just kind of come in. I think we just got a song repeat, like, instantly after itself. Interesting. Not that I'm going to complain, I've been enjoying this funk music. It's been a nice twist over the lo-fi that we had. Gonna sort of, like, smooth, like, just throw that in there for color. There's, like, a little bit in here, too. Okay. You know, that's actually starting to resemble the character a little bit, ain't it? Now that's exciting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to nerf the opacity of that layer too. I'm going to make a new layer, and this is going to be our final rough. And this isn't technically necessary, I just think that it's a better, like, this goes into one of my other philosophies. By the way, if you haven't been on one of my streams before, I ramble a lot about my personal, just like, management and life and how I think about things. I think most streamers do. So, like, interrupt me if I'm on some boring tangent or something, or if you disagree, or if you do agree. But I like to leave off... My day job requires me to do a lot of what they call task switching, where, like, it's not as efficient as being... The most efficient way to deal with tasks is to just sit down, do one, finish it, do the next, finish it, and so on. But a lot of the times that just doesn't work because stuff has different deadlines, or stuff gets interrupted, or you have meetings, or whatever. So the ability to task switch, which is not multitask, not multitasking. You don't want to do several things at the same time, but the ability to put something down, work on something else for a while, and then pick that first thing back up again without having to fully refresh on it is really useful. And so I put a lot of energy into making sure that I can put projects down in a place where they're easy to pick back up. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do with this final rough layer. I want to leave a version of the rough where we don't have to deal with different layers, we don't have to remember what's behind other stuff. We can pick this up next stream, which is tomorrow, because today's a Monday, and just stinking go right at it again. It's still a rough. I'm not that worried about getting like precise. Like this isn't inking. Even though there's a part of my brain that's going to tell me it's inking and it's going to make me redo the same line that doesn't matter like 9 times. Like right then. But generally speaking, I'm just trying to get the rough lines in here so that we know exactly what we're working with when we come back. See, I'm resting my wrist really heavily on the drawing tablet right now. Probably not really what I... Well, it's a big arc. Well, if it's a big arc, then I definitely shouldn't be doing it. Okay. That stays roughly consistent throughout, but I only bothered like roughing it in like for that bit. And so we'll leave it as such. This can be a little bigger, but I'm not going to mess with it yet. We know that the fur curve needs to be more like this. Pardon. Let me drink some water real quick. Been a while since I've done a proper monologue on one of these, isn't it? I've been so like sleepy or distracted or jumping between different things or trying to read Blender stinking documentation. Not that Blender docs are bad, it's actually got really good documentation. I'm not gonna like excellent stuff and great forum support and all sorts of stuff. But it's just a lot to parse. And as with every forum post, half the stuff is written by people who are so pro at it that they don't stinking remember that people don't know what all the terms are, or like aren't trying to optimize stuff to the max degree. They're just trying to get it to work, and so like you end up with not always just phenomenally helpful advice. Oh, that dot at the end is actually like a belt strap that's coming through, and this dot here is actually like a belt buckle. That's an interesting detail that I'll try to capture just a little bit. Again, this is still rough, so we're not actually like locking any of this stuff in. I gotta say, this is an absurd level of detail to include. Like, look at the detail on these metal pieces. Like, that's just phenomenal. How the heck does FromSoft have time to do this kind of stuff? Like, their dev cycle must be ridiculous. I'm sure the devs have bad crunch. I've heard it's not great. But, like, I don't know. There's a lot of games that have worse crunch than them and make way less good-looking things. I'm just blown away all the time. So this, I'm going to try to emphasize is clearly, like, the metal edge as opposed to some of the fabric behind. Let's see. Got most of that in there. Starting to get to important, like, actual body details. I'm always hesitant on kind of the light doing its thing here, which I shouldn't mess with yet because we're in roughs. Getting ahead of myself. Does this come up this high? It's really like a little lower, isn't it? There we go. Actually, yeah, that really is kind of... Really needs to be more like that, doesn't it? Okay, there we go, there we go. I keep on working on this. But yeah, so I'm just trying to... I know I already talked a bit about what I'm trying to do here, but just thinking it through, I'm trying to leave this in a way where I'll be able to pick it up and think, and not have to think about what's on the front layer, what's actually supposed to be behind, stuff like that. Okay, so this section is also one. It's also a chance to do like a little bit of refinement. Anything that like crossed my mind, but like that I'll probably forget by the time we're doing this tomorrow, but which I wanted to just make sure I sort of got on here. This has like a slight tilt, but like the actual down curve starts earlier. So yeah, that's better. That's a little smoother. It's not that smooth though. There we go. There's kind of... There's still some slight proportion issues in this section. Stuff isn't lining up quite the way it oughta. It's not anything that's like illustration breaking to my knowledge, as best as I can tell. Like, I'm not that worried about it, but it's just sort of an observation. Like, I'm aware there's stuff there that I haven't quite resolved yet. This one... Actually, okay. Clear out that line. Okay, wait, no, hold on. That circle ain't squat. Undo, undo, undo. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Hold on. That's the other reason, is some of this stuff needs to get cleaned up so I don't start making mistakes like that, because that's only going to get worse the less I remember, like the longer I go since I drew those lines. There we go. I am still going to keep the faint ones under here. We do know that that part is at least visible in the final. Like, you can actually see the lighting on the nose and stuff. So that part's still relevant. Okay, thinking about this, I don't want to move, like, I want to get this part sorted before I move on to the top of the helmet, because there's a lot going on the top of the helm. Okay, center point, left edge of the center dot is, well, the center dot is bigger than this dot, and the left edge of it is roughly centered with that dot. So I'm thinking something like that, mayhaps? The big one is about that then. Does that line up with everything else the way I expect? With this fabric, yes. With this gap, not quite, but I think that's because the gap is too big, like too high up, truthfully. There's still some stuff to fix over there. With the lock below, yes, or the mechanism rather. Okay, so I think that one's good. I'll try to actually, like, I'm not too worried about detail here, especially because there's still some issue here, and odds are fixing that's going to mess with all this other stuff. Because it should end, like, hit the edge here. And then that should go more like that. Okay, actually that's not so bad, and it still makes sense with this, so I think it's the right fix. Cool. That was not the right button at all. Okay, let's see. Dagnabbit, still an eraser. The center points of these kind of follow this curve. No, I don't want to cut the entire layer. I actually wanted to hit undo, but I always manage to hit the cut entire layer hotkey instead. It's a fun hotkey. Very dramatic results if you accidentally hit yes. Easily undone, but still dramatic. Hold on. That's the actual right number, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Yeah, okay, cool. That's good. These sort of come out, oh, like a little too small still. But oh, and they actually arc out from the intersection of the one behind them. That's interesting. Kind of arcs out from there, actually. Makes them a little bigger than they initially look. Okay. Not perfect, but it is something to work off of. Let's see. Yeah, well, obviously we'll have to do that with finer detail when we're actually doing details, but we're not doing that yet. So we're not doing that yet. Okay. And now that we know how the line should curve, it gives me a little more flexibility to actually do broad sweeping line, like the faster sweeping lines, and follow them along while still getting the smoothness of doing like a fast line. We've done all the planning of the slow line with all of the niceness of a fast line. It's a good mix. Gotta make sure there's nothing in there. Get that one. There we go. I've got decent line control once I'm warmed up. And once I know where the line actually needs to go. Okay, now for this piece. I'm gonna brag about line control and then not be able to do it. Okay, so this kind of curves in though, that's fine. That presumably has like a slight up in it. Probably not gonna be visible, truthfully, but you know. Let's see. Clear that out for now. Whoops. Oh, yep, okay, that's actually fine. This one's just kind of like a rough. That's fine. Decent idea of the knot work. I think this nice big center knot might be a little out of position, but not enough to get the rest of the drawing tangled. Okay, I'll stop. Who am I kidding? I definitely won't. Okay. Yeah, I had a bad arm angle to get this one. Just gotta... Gonna take me a couple tries. Or I can rotate the canvas. That just usually gets a little janky. But sometimes it does just let you nail the line in one go. It's amazing what working with... I mean, I shouldn't be doing it with my wrist, but I was drawing it with my wrist, so I might as well try to work to its favor, you know? That line's good. Now let's see if we missed any. If I hide the two underlying layers, and we got all the details we need for this in a nice, slightly more final rough. Y'all see anything I missed? I think we got it all on this go. Obviously, there's still plenty more, like lining up the slits in the helmet, other details, figuring out fur and texture. There's a lot more to do on this. We got a long way to go. But, okay, thanks, Windows Virus and Threat Protection. Very cool of you for drop in. Great to have you. Thanks for watching stream, Windows Virus Protection. Nice to have a guest star, you know? But yeah, so that'll be I think that's kind of our final rough, at least for today. We're gonna throw these into a group. I'm tempted to say day one, but I know that's gonna mess up the titles later if I like go back to stuff. So we're just gonna do rough outlines. We can use this to try to do a foundation of some more complex sketching tomorrow, including one of the big things that we'll need to do in addition to look, we'll do like finer details, of course, and that should really be a folder. Oh jeepers. Fine detail outline. Truthfully, what I've got is already fairly moving along in that direction. But the other thing I need is, maybe even before we get to that, these can sort of be done in either order. I want rough shadow blocking, or value blocking. Figuring out light and dark points, start to get an idea of where that is. I'll probably attempt a thing, well, we'll see, I don't want to overpromise this, But we may attempt to just do this in grayscale first. And then go back in and start adding colors and such. That way we can get the saturation and such right before we dive too far in. But I do think that's going to end it for stream today. Thank you all for dropping by. It's been a blast. It's nice to have some enthusiasm and energy again now that like all the holiday stuff is settled and I'm reorganized and packed. Well, unpacked rather. Work is kind of leveled out, or at least gotten back into a normal routine. Weather's nice, all that jazz. Stuff's kind of lining up. Okay. Admittedly, I will say my definition of nice weather is different. It's currently like sleet outside and like 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which for you Celsius folks is below 0. But it's nice and cozy in here, and so I'm happy. It's also nice and chilly out there, which helps wake me up. So all in all, I'm enjoying it. So I hope that y'all got a little bit of enjoyment or excitement or energy or what have you out of this as well. Hope that it's a good time. And I hope that maybe we'll see you next time. Or not, you know, whatever y'all want to do. I ain't a homework assignment. So, I hope y'all have an excellent... I've talked about this. I end up doing like 3 outros because I never find one that satisfies me and I just keep going. So the one we're sort of going on, I do genuinely hope y'all have an excellent morning, afternoon, evening, night, 3 a.m., whatever it happens to be, and that you have a good one till next time.